Well, welcome, Mr. Scott Schmaren. It's great to see you today.
Hey, it's good to see you too, Rick. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. I'm telling you, every time I get to spend time around you, it is, I would say the word I would use is pleasant. It is so
Oh,
pleasant to be around
you're
you.
kind. Thank
And
you.
no, I just enjoy it very much. And I also, I look up to what you do. I admire it and appreciate it. And I know you've got a great story to tell, but you're doing good stuff too.
Thank you.
And man, I have to say I was kind of bragging to people that you were going to be on here. So, we have that to live up to now.
Uh-oh.
But yeah, so we met, as a lot of people that have been on this podcast so far. We met through our mutual friend, Paul Martinelli.
Sure.
And while we're remote today, you've actually been in the Refinery studio once upon a time, working on some sales stuff with Paul. And so, the people that are going to, in this conversation, people are going to hear about your expertise in hypnosis and your experience with that. But I'd really love to hear your story of how you came to that and what you want to share about your story. How did you get into the practice of hypnosis and what led to that? And then, we'll kind of go from there. Yeah.
Sure. Well, I think like a lot of people, I got into hypnosis out of the frustration of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I've always struggled with my weight.
Mm-hmm.
As a kid, I was always, well, I still am, this very sensitive kid. And I had this little voice in my head that said, you need to make a difference in this world and you need to help people. And I really wasn't sure I was going to do that, especially as a little kid. But you would have known me when I was a kid because I was the fat kid in my neighborhood. Literally, I was the heaviest kid in my neighborhood, and I was known for that.
Yeah.
It's a distinction I probably am not too thrilled that I had.
Sure.
And, I was teased and I was bullied. I was made fun of. And not even just by the kids, even the parents too. They would, call me names and tease me. And it hurt.
Yeah.
It hurt big time. And I started to withdraw from the world. I spent my days being consoled by the refrigerator.
Yeah.
And the TV set, watching bad sitcoms in the 60s and the 70s.
Yeah.
And they became my best friends. And, the more I was teased, the more I would withdraw, and the more I would eat, and the more TV I would watch, and I would get bigger. And then so this became a self-perpetuating cycle, and it got worse and worse.
Yeah.
And I really just started to isolate myself from the world. And, again, there's so many times in my life I remember things happening to me. Like, I remember as a kid, I don't know if you remember this in school, in gym class every year, they would do the President's program on physical fitness.
Yeah.
And, it was every year, it was a week long, and it would be push-ups and sit-ups and all kinds of ups.
Yes.
None of them I did well, but the day I hated the most is on one of the days they would weigh us. And in junior high school, I had a gym teacher who thought it was much more efficient to weigh us from the lightest to the heaviest kid.
Oh my goodness.
And it would be the same thing every year. It'd be towards the end of gym class on that day. And all the kids would be on this side of the gym. They'd already been weighed. And here I am out here by myself, waiting for the call. Actually, to be honest with you, waiting in my head, always thinking to myself, why can't some new kid move into my neighborhood and be bigger and fatter than me?
Right.
So I didn't have the title of being the biggest and the fattest. And the call would come out every year, and I dreaded it. And the gym teacher would say, okay, Schmaren, and anybody else who's left. And it was always just me. And the crowd would start cheering, and applauding like I was the king. And I put on, it seemed to be my standard thing, I'd put on this standard, stupid, fake grin.
Yeah.
Didn't want the world to see what I was feeling on the inside.
Sure.
But inside I was dying. It was just killing me. And I remember other times in my life. I remember in my early 20s being invited to a New Year's Eve party. And I was thrilled that somebody invited me. And I go to this party, and there's about 50 people there, and they have this spread of food. And I remember making a big plate of food, grabbing a Diet Coke. And then I found this beautiful wooden rocking chair to sit in. And It was perfect. It gave me a vantage point. I could see everybody. I could sit down. And I remember sitting in the chair and the chair broke. And it didn't just break. I crushed it. It was like a scene out of a movie. It's like the whole thing just went, exploded. And here I am sprawled out on the floor, this little short fat guy, food everywhere. And in that moment, the entire room froze. Silence. And then they turned around and everybody started to laugh. And you know what? I guess I would laugh too. I mean, to everybody but me, it was probably pretty funny looking.
Sure.
And all I remember is how embarrassed I was. And I remember I was wishing that I was about this big.
Yeah,
so I could hide somewhere, but I couldn't. Put on the stupid grin, laughed it off like it was no big deal, and I left. And I spent that New Year's Eve in my apartment with my two best friends at that time. A large sausage pizza from a local place called Nick's and a frozen Sara Lee cheesecake. And man, I ate them all. I was angry and I would eat until I just couldn't move and I was in pain. It's like it was giving me something I wasn't getting from life.
Right.
And I hated the world. I hated myself. Why didn't people accept me? Why didn't I accept myself? I had a million excuses. None of them were valid. And it finally got to the point, I don't know how many times I had lost 100, gained it back. Lost 150, gained it back. And I couldn't take it anymore. I remember I just put back, I think, 165 pounds.
Yeah.
I was miserable and I gave up. Okay, what am I going to do now? What else is there for me in this life? What am I going to do? I've tried it all. I was at my peak. You can't tell from here. I'm a giant. I'm 5'6". I had a 56-inch waist. I was almost as big around as I was tall. I weighed 360 pounds. I mean, I would go in public and little kids would say, "Mommy, look at the fat man." And they weren't being mean.
Right.
I looked different. I stood out from everybody else. And in that moment, I gave up. Hated myself. I hated the world. I quit.
Yeah.
I lost my will and desire to live. And at that point, I remember taking a bottle of sleeping pills and a bottle of painkillers, probably enough medication to kill an elephant. And I remember pouring them into a paper Dixie cup. I walked into my bathroom and I remember putting it on the bathroom counter. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I didn't see anything. And I took all the medication. I took it all. And in that moment, after I swallowed all those pills, two emotions came over me. One, I felt this really tremendous sense of relief, like, okay, I'm going to die now and I am not going to be in pain anymore. And then this other feeling of dread. Oh my God, what have I done? What's going to happen? If I do die, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? Am I in trouble? What's going to happen? And I remember I had this chair in my living room I used to sit in. I used to hide from the world. It was like my security blanket. I'd watch TV, I would eat, I'd talk on the phone. I'd hide from the world there. And I sat in that chair and waited. And at some point I passed out. I really can't tell you what happened much after that, but something miraculous had to happen. I can't explain it to this day, but I mean, I took enough pills probably to kill an elephant. Passed out in that chair, never went to a hospital. I woke up the next morning still sitting in that chair. And I had this very, very life-changing, surreal moment. I remember opening my eyes and I saw the light coming through my living room window. And I had this very surreal moment. It was so peaceful and so tranquil. I thought truthfully I was dead. But then I realized I was alive. And I was really overwhelmed with emotions. These tears started falling from my eyes. And I realized for the first time in my life, I was responsible. I was responsible for everything that happened in my life. I was responsible for being heavy. I was responsible for not being accepted or not fitting in. I realized it was me. It wasn't anybody else. It was me. And in that moment, I took responsibility for who I am and what I am. And I remember getting up out of that chair and saying, okay, I need to find out why there are two people inside of me.
Yeah.
the one that wants to change and lose weight and be happy and successful and loved and be loving.
Mm-hmm.
And yet every time I moved in that direction, there was another one inside of me that says, oh, no, you're not going to go do that. And would suck me right back to where I was before.
Mm-hmm.
So I started on this quest. I mean, I remember setting my first goal just to go out in public and not be noticed for being the fat guy.
Right.
And so I wanted to know why my mind worked this way.
Mm-hmm.
So I started reading, started studying. How did the mind work? Everything talked about the subconscious mind. Didn't matter what I was studying, whether it was hypnosis or NLP or creative visualization or pick another modality.
Right.
But they all had commonalities.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized it was the pictures in my head that had been programmed inside of me since I was a kid.
Yeah.
They were keeping me where I was at. We are designed that way. We are designed to do the same thing we've always done with no filter of right or wrong, good or bad.
Right.
And so I started studying more and more. I started taking courses in hypnosis. And so to speak, I became my own Frankenstein experiment. And I created this vision for myself that had a strong, healthy, lean, attractive, youthful body weighing 175 pounds or less that I would maintain easily for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I used hypnosis and I burned that into my subconscious mind.
Yeah.
And fast forward, here I am today. I have kept off almost 200 pounds now for more than 15 years, probably closer to 20 years now.
Yes.
I don't look the same. I don't think the same. I've been able to turn my biological clock backwards. I'm 62 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I've been able to move my clock backwards and make myself younger and healthier. Like if you looked at me, you would never know I was ever heavy.
No, I would. And I've been around you several times and I would have never guessed that had I not known the story.
Which is actually kind of a fun thing now because I bump into people that like I went to grade school or high school with. And if I don't really want them to know who I am, I don't tell them. So, and they have
kind of undercover, right?
Yes. Yeah. Incognito.
Yeah.
And, I was selling real estate at the time and obviously people noticed.
Yeah.
And I started helping people here and there. And the little voice in my head telling me that I had all my life that I needed to help people and make a difference in this world.
Right.
It grew longer, it grew louder and stronger. And really I had a way of doing that now.
Yeah.
And I tried to ignore it. I tried to stay with doing what I was doing. And at some point I couldn't. Walked away from what I was doing, selling real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And here I am. I had no idea how I was going to do this, what they was going to look like. And I've had the blessed opportunity now to help a lot of people do a lot of different things, work with anywhere from kids to athletes to business people, and people that need help.
Yeah.
And so I've been able to really fulfill my life's mission, which is to make a difference in people's lives. So here I am today.
Here you are today. And so how long, so it's been 15 years since you had that moment and you
actually have moments longer. I've been this weight I'm at now for over 15 years.
For over 15 and maybe even 20 years, right?
Yeah.
And then how long into, so there was that moment you wake up, you see the light in the room. Because I can imagine that's a clearly, as you've well described, it's a pivotal moment. That was, that was definitely a never again moment, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And how long from that moment until you were then working with your first person, helping them get introduced and helping them with hypnosis?
You know what? That's a good question. I'm not sure. It's interesting. So the questions I get all the time from people are, how long did it take you to lose the weight?
Mm-hmm.
And do you think you'll ever go back to what you did before? And what did you do to lose the weight? Is the other thing they asked me too.
Yeah.
And I always answer that question this way. Is I really don't know. Like in the past, I could tell you the day I started an eating program and the day it ended.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be a master. I could drop 100 pounds in 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how long it took this time because what I realized, and this is true for all change, is we have a tendency to want to change something on our exterior that we don't like, whether it's a habit or something, thinking it's going to change the inside of us.
Yes.
But it doesn't work that way. It works the other way around, is you change the inside and then the outside changes. Because what happens is the outside thing we're struggling with is a coping mechanism. It's helping us deal with whatever we really can't deal with in our life. So the moment I started changing the pictures in my head, my mind said, 175-pound man. Well, I wonder what they do. How do they eat? How do they dress? How do they carry themselves? How do they think? How do they work? And slowly but surely, I started adopting those behaviors, and I became less and less concerned about the short-term outcomes. In other words, oh my God, I lost 2 pounds this week. That's great. Or I gained 2 pounds. Oh my God, I got to change everything. I became married to the process. I didn't care anymore. And all of a sudden, one day I wake up, I'm under 175 pounds. I don't have to change anything because I became that first. It's true for anything. We have a tendency, especially in the world we live in now, is we focus on the short term. Everything is, we live in an instantaneous world now. I mean, you and I, when we were younger, if we ordered something out of a catalog, if you got it in 30 days, you were thrilled.
Right.
Now, day 3.
Yeah.
Where is it? Why isn't it here yet? We're used to instant gratification. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way in life. It's I always use the comparison like this. Let's say you're going to buy a really good stock in the stock market. You're going to buy it. You're going to hold it for a year, come back a year later, sell it, and make money on it. Smartest thing you could do is buy it, forget about it, set your calendar for a year from now, come back a year later, stock goes way up. You're very happy, you sell it. But that's not what happens. What happens is you start looking at it every day. And all of a sudden the stock goes way up and you get really excited and you start counting all the money you don't have yet. And then all of a sudden something happens and the stock starts to tank. The whole market starts to tank and it starts to go down. You start getting nervous and it goes down, and then it goes down lower than what you paid for it. And then you panic, sell it, and you lose money. Now the trend for the stock for the whole year was phenomenal, but it wasn't this. It did this and it did this and it did this. So if you look at it on a daily basis, you could make yourself crazy.
Sure.
You could say it as a loser on some days, but in the long term, it wasn't. And that's how we have to look at how we make change. Change is a process that you just keep doing, and it's about patience, persistence, and faith, period.
It's so well said. So well said. And it's actually right in line. Before we got on, I told you that I'll be doing a webinar this Friday, the week that we're filming this, and that is right in line with what I'll be sharing. So well said. And what I hear in what you're saying, you heard it, there was a key word in there, many great words, but a key word. You said the word becoming, because I think that's what a lot of people miss is we get caught up in the doing and we forget about the being part of this and the becoming part of this, right? This is a becoming journey. And as you've well described, that doesn't start outside of you, right? That takes place on the inside of you.
Inside.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
we're all looking for that bolt of lightning to come out of the sky and strike us between the forehead and between our eyes.
Yeah.
And our life instantly changes. But I don't know about you, but I don't know too many people that it's happened for. So
yeah, sure. So, let's talk about this part, because I think people that have this awareness. I mean, this has been quite a journey for you, just as professionally, because you've been on the Oprah show, you've been on Howard Stern, and so people are very aware of you, and in really kind of a way that a lot of people don't really even gain that kind of recognition in their profession. How did those kinds of connections work for you just in this professional journey? That's really what I'm asking about.
So it's, and this is a perfect example of how vision works. So I created this vision that I wanted to weigh 175 pounds and be strong, healthy, youthful, and young, and maintain it easily for the rest of my life. And as I got closer to that, my vision started to evolve. Then my vision became, okay, my life's purpose is to help people. I made a big one. I said, okay, I want to help more than 10 million people in my lifetime discover how amazing they are and create and live the life of their dreams.
Nice.
I had no idea how I was going to do that. That's a lot of people. I can't do that working one-on-one with people. So I just started focusing my attention on it. All of a sudden, I don't know, 3-4 months later, I get myself on the Howard Stern show. Now, here's what's interesting about that. I've been listening to that show for years. And they're hard to get hold of. They have an audience of 30 million people. Okay. So one of the guys on the show is talking about this lady, the Long Island medium, and how he thinks that people come back from their past lives because they have unresolved business, and they're just tearing him up on the show.
Yeah.
So there's really not a way to get a hold of them. So on their website it says, hey, do you have a comment about the show? So all I did, I typed in there, said, hey, wouldn't it be really cool if we did a past life regression on this guy on the air? And oh, by the way, that's what I do. Here's my name and here's my email address. I didn't think anything of it. So 10 days later, I get an email from one of the producers saying, I'd like to talk to you more. So we had a conversation, told him some wild stories of things that have happened. He goes, this could be really interesting. He goes, we have our writers meeting every Thursday, and we're going to pitch this idea. I'll call you either way. Thursday afternoon, boom. When do you want to come here? I laid out my protocol, and it was a very surreal moment going on the show like that. One, it's scarier than hell because I don't know what's going to happen. I'm relying on somebody else's reaction to what I do with them.
Yeah.
On the air in front of 30 million people live.
Yeah.
It could be a bust out and I'm going to look like a fool.
Yep.
Or it's going to be great. Well, it ended up being phenomenal. The segment was almost an hour long. And then I was completely unprepared for what was going to happen next, which was all of a sudden people started contacting me.
Yeah. Reaching out to you.
And at that point I was working with people face-to-face only. And then I had this wacky idea that, I'm getting a lot of calls. Most of them are coming from that 3-hour radius around New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Boston, some from other parts of the country. But in that genre, I go, I wonder if people would come and pay me to work with me if I came to New York. So I had this wacky idea. I figured out what I needed to charge, what it was going to cost me to go out there. I booked a hotel for 3 days. No airline ticket. I figured if I can't even book the 3 days, I'll just cancel the hotel.
Sure.
And I said, okay, people are going to have to pay me up front. They're going to have to see me at least twice when I'm there. I booked the 3 days in an hour and I kept adding days. So the first time I went, I think I went there for 10 or 12 days. And then I did that every month for 11 months. And my protocol at that time was really what the same is now is I'd sit down with somebody, talk for 10, 15 minutes, and take notes on the things they say and how they say them, do a session with them, record it, and then email them the session. So they keep listening to it. And so one of my clients says, when I listen to the recording, it's like you're here with me live. I go, oh.
A light bulb,
right? A big light bulb.
Yeah.
So I said, let's try an experiment because I was getting people like from California or from South Carolina, and I couldn't go out there, and I was getting the same results. So I just said, all right, let's just everything on the phone, and I can be anywhere in the country. And fast forward, here I am today. I've been on that show now, I think 10 times over the years. And what's funny is you think you're going to get calls after that for wacky stuff. And I've done some wacky things on that.
Sure.
But I have gotten an Olympic athlete out of that. I have worked with the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, some celebrities, and really some people with some serious things. So I've been very blessed for the things that have happened. But it goes back to putting it out into the universe, what you really want.
Right.
And all of a sudden, things seems to find you that you weren't expecting to find you. And I think that's a really important thing is, you have to tune in and, you talk about this in Think and Grow Rich. You have to turn into that radio station you want to get.
Yeah.
If you tune into it, all of a sudden you start hearing the music that the station's playing.
I love that. Paul does this really great teaching. He calls it Think in Millions, where he talks about his journey of he used to, be a kid and used to get pennies or, something for, then he gets $1 for his birthday and all of a sudden, he's doing something, he's making $20. And so there's this progression of you think in higher numbers, and intentionally at one point in his journey, he was in the hundreds of thousands and made himself set a goal of 2 million instead of 1. And that really helped him to realize that you could set the limit. And it's a really great description of what you did. You thought in millions. You started that whole thing by thinking in 10 million people. All right.
Well, even as a kid, think about this as a kid. All right. You're a little kid. You don't make any money. It's not a big deal. And I know I started delivering newspapers. All of a sudden I had a little bit of change in my pocket. Then I got my first real job. I had a little bit more money in my pocket. But what happens is as you start to progress forward, it becomes harder to go back to what you did before because you become more accustomed to how you're living. and then working on pushing yourself forward.
Sure.
And so I think that's really important.
Well, let me ask, because this is what it occurs to me. As you do that progression, this is an expansive journey, right? It's really internally you're expanding. And to me, I'd like to hear comments on this. You set the milepost, you set the number, right? You said at one point, 10 million.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you had said 10,000, the process would have been the same.
Mm-hmm.
The outcomes would have been different, but the process by which you reach 10,000 versus 10 million would be the same. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I agree with you. It's, whatever we ask for, we get.
Mm-hmm.
If we ask for a little, we get little. And I'm not even talking about monetarily.
Right.
Relationships, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Life is a constant evolution.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you choose to believe that or not, it's still going to happen. I mean, things change. Nothing stays the same. You can decide not to do anything about it and let life pass you by.
Mm-hmm.
But like even now, okay, I've been the same body weight for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
My body composition now is not the same as it was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
10 years ago. I evolve and change. I eat differently than when I first started.
Mm-hmm.
I do things differently. I learn more and I keep growing and evolving and changing. Mm-hmm. And it's important, and I think that's one of the things people struggle with too, is they set a goal for themselves. And then once they get the goal, they're done. There's nothing more to do.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really work that way. Years ago, I worked with an insurance salesman, very, very, very successful guy,
Mm-hmm.
very type A driven personality. Everything was goals.
Yeah.
Kept losing and gaining the same 30 pounds.
Mm.
And I said to him, well, what's your goal? He goes, my goal is to lose 30 pounds. I go, that's a crappy goal. I go, because you're good at accomplishing your goals. So what happens? He loses the 30 pounds. His mind goes, oh, we did it. All done. Let's go back to what we did before. Mm. And he's very competitive. So I said to him, because you know what? Your goal is not to lose the 30 pounds. Your goal is to get down to the weight you want to be at, but you can't win until the day you die and you're at that weight or less. Mm. So now it becomes a lifelong thing.
Yeah.
Not as, can I lose it as fast as I can? And then in my mind, it's been satisfied.
Yeah.
And I have that sometimes with my clients is they assume that once they get what they want, they're done.
Yeah.
And they just stop doing it. Happens for a lot of people that lose weight. They kill themselves to lose weight. Mm-hmm. They get down to their goal, what they set for themselves, and it's, oh, I'm done. And they go right back to what they did before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't work that way.
Doesn't work that way. And so, okay, so you've identified, I'm going to put words on it. These may not be the words that you use, but what I want to really ask you about are maybe a couple of other things that people tend to do that get in their own way. And I would say one way I would describe what you just said is one way people get in their own way is they see a certain thing they want to go after as an event or as an end unto itself. Mm-hmm. And so to me, that's kind of staying in the doing realm. I'm going to do this for a certain season to get to this place and then done.
I'm
right?
cured. Right.
Cured, right? I'm done. And then, and so, as you've well described, then you go back and forth, right? So, anyway, speaking to that a little bit, yeah.
Here's my thoughts on this. Mm-hmm. One of the things we get in trouble with is expectations. Mm-hmm. So an expectation is a double-edged sword. Mm-hmm. The expectation of accomplishing what you want to accomplish is important. It's great. Mm-hmm. But then a lot of times we create expectations about how long the journey is supposed to take. Mm-hmm. And the path we're supposed to take. Mm. And I would say even that's okay, but then sometimes we get married to that expectation. Mm. And when we get married to that expectation, and by the way, we create that expectation, it's not based on anything, it's just based on our opinion. Right. It's not factual. Mm-hmm. Then when we don't meet the expectation, we think that we failed. Mm. We quit. I see this all, I would say the biggest reason people fail, regardless of what they're trying to accomplish. Mm-hmm. I've worked with hundreds of people, spoken to lots of organizations and groups and businesses, is people fail at accomplishing their goals, not because they're not capable, mm-hmm. because they created an expectation that was unobtainable. Mm. And where if they would have just kept going, they would be fine. right? It is the consistency of our daily routines
Mm-hmm.
that is the recipe for success. I mean, look at the most highly successful people,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of what they do, business, sports,
Yes.
leaders. What do they do better than everybody else? Small things consistently. And you know what? It's boring. It's very boring.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's funny. Years ago, I had a real estate trainer I work with, and he used to train some of the top agents in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And he used to say to us, you know, success is boring. He goes, you find something that works, you just keep doing it over and over and over again. It's boring as hell, as you say. It's boring as hell. But you know what? The results are exciting.
Mm.
And he's right, though.
I love
and
that.
that's the reason people fail, is because, again, they want the big aha moment. Well, like they have the big aha moment. But the reality is, it's just doing things on a daily basis. I mean, you see an Olympic athlete on the podium getting a gold medal. What you don't see is every day, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
How they wake up, what time they wake up, what do they eat, how they train, what times they train, mental conditioning. It's doing the same thing over and over again till you get what you want.
Yeah.
I mean, the recipe is very easy,
Mm-hmm.
but people don't want to do that.
To that end, or with that in mind, I suppose, if someone, what I've noticed, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, I know I'm not the only one, when it comes to social media, your routine, your practice is to, you say what you're thankful for. It's usually about 3 things. And you tell why. You ask people to, consider what they're thankful for. And so I think there's, to me, as I listen to that, there's different elements of that. But what is that? Talk about, because I think that what you're doing has to do with this approach that you're just talking about. But I think it's more than that. So help me understand that approach and talk about that a little bit. And
Sure.
What is that for you? And what do you hope that is for other people?
So I've been doing my gratitude now since I started this 20 some odd years ago. And I don't think I've missed a day on social media probably in 10 years. Some of these things, some of them didn't even exist 10 years ago. But, we think that we're aware of everything that goes on around us. And we're not. We're only aware of a very small percentage. And we're aware of what's going on around us based on our values and beliefs and the banter that's going on in our head. And unfortunately, most people's banter is pretty negative. Their self-talk is negative. So the reason I like the practice and the discipline of finding gratitude every day is it begins to train your mind to look for what's good and right in and around you in your daily life.
Love that.
And like I tell people, they don't have to be big things. I give this exercise. So the exercise I give to my clients at the beginning is 3 things you're thankful for, 3 things you love and like about yourself, and 3 things you're good at. And they have to be different every day. And they go, oh my God, that's going to be so difficult. And it is. What happens, it gets really hard after the second or third day. Why?
Yeah.
Because they're only used to finding those things in the big obvious things. They exist around them all day long. Like I say to them, you know what? It could be something as simple as saying, I'm a really good scrambled egg maker. I make great scrambled eggs. Great. Then put down that you're good at that. What you're doing is you're beginning to train your mind to focus on what's good and right in and around you. And you're retraining your mind instead of focusing on what's bad. And when you start to notice the things around you that are good and right in and around you, life gets a little bit better. You start to notice opportunities. You start to see things in colors you didn't see before. And I think that people, it's important that they do that. It's important that they begin to focus on what they want, not on what they don't like about themselves.
Very nice. And there's a symbol that I use. I don't know if you recall when you were here in the classroom, there's a symbol on the wall, and it really is the infinity symbol, but there's a way in which that it has meaning and significance. But one way, simple word to say is circulation. It's flow. And what you're talking about in gratitude, and I always think about when I see your videos come on about that, I always think about that you're staying in flow with that, and meaning that you're not restricting the circulation of good things to continue to and by the way, it's not that they're not always there. The flow that you're not constricting is your awareness of all those good things, of your awareness of your ability to celebrate what's right with the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, I certainly, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who thinks this, but certainly gratitude has a physical component to it, an emotional component, an intellectual component, a spiritual component. And so gratitude is one of those things like music. I don't know if you've seen these studies on music, but the right music will light up every area of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And music is one of those things that affects all of your being. And it seems to me that gratitude would be on that perhaps short list of those things. I think it is, you mentioned about saying what you want to the universe, right? To me, it's part of that conversation, right? And it's part of that flow, that give and take of that conversation.
The universe is always listening, and your mind is always listening to what you say and what you do. And it's important. Like, it's not always easy. I have days it's hard to find the three things. If I'm having a really bad day, I have to sit there for a few minutes and really think about it.
Yeah.
Because my mind's not focused on that. It's focused on what went wrong.
Sure. Well,
and so what it does is it helps me change the course and direction of my thinking process, especially when I need it. It's when you have the greatest day of your life, this is easy.
Yeah, right.
But you need to be able to do it when the day's not so good either.
Well, you said 10 years, right? I mean, a lot of life happens in 10 years.
Sure.
Relationships change. You may lose people you care about. Your location may change, and many times over, and especially through the traveling that you do, and even where you live. The weather changes all the time.
Yeah.
And I like that because it's, again, those things are external. The thing about the constant in life is change, but
Sure.
I can tell you just in recent days, I just lost somebody close to me.
Sorry.
Yeah. And I was very aware. I'm very aware of my sadness, but even in that sadness, I was aware that I'm experiencing sadness as I should be.
Yes.
This person is important to me. But I said out loud as we were on our way to this visitation, I just said out loud, I'm a happy man.
And that's okay. And that's good to be that way. We have a tendency sometimes, and our minds are notorious for this, is especially when we're doing something new. Like, my gratitude is part of my daily routines and my discipline.
Mm-hmm.
My daily routines, from how I work out and how I do my recordings and my meditations with myself and my gratitude, they are all part of my routines and help me stay connected to myself. And what happens for a lot of people is they tie those things to everything else in their life. So something bad happens, they stop doing their routine. And we have to create these routines that keep us connected to ourselves. And think of it this way. You need them to be like how you would take a shower and brush your teeth.
Yeah. Every
day you brush your teeth and take a shower, whether you're having the greatest day of your life or the worst day of your life.
Well said.
And the reason you do them is because your mind doesn't associate them with those things. And so your routines, how you take care of yourself, are important. In fact, on the worst day of your life, your routine is probably the most important connection you have to yourself to be the highest and best version of yourself. Not to abandon it, but to embrace it. On the days you're having the greatest day, it's important too, but it's more important in the days that you're having a hard time.
Very well said. Love that. Okay, so what is your best functional definition of hypnosis? Like what is hypnosis? How would you describe it to a layperson who's never at least knowingly had an experience with hypnosis or how do you describe it?
A scientific definition of hypnosis is a monofocused state of mind where you're focusing all your attention on one thing. Everything else fades away in the background. Here's a good example. We have a tendency to believe that we're aware of everything around us. The reality is we are aware of almost nothing around us. It's a very small percentage. Imagine this. right now, even as the two of us are speaking, we are taking in millions and millions and millions of bits of information through our five senses. Yet we can process 2,000 a minute. So millions and millions are coming in a second, processing a few thousand a minute. What happens to all of it? Well, almost all of it's deleted because it's worthless information, but we keep the information that's relevant to us based on our values and beliefs. Just like you could have 10 people witness a car accident. If I interview all 10 people, I get 10 stories that are similar, not the same. Saw the same thing. What was different? Their perspective. And so hypnosis is kind of like that, is it's focusing, it's a doorway into your subconscious mind, which, by the way, that's where all change takes place. We do very little consciously. Neuroscientists say 85 to 90% of what we do on a daily basis is done at a subconscious level. So, and people, especially in this country more so, think of hypnosis as kind of a woo-woo thing.
Yeah.
But here's a good example of it. How many times have you driven your car to the same place you go all the time? You got there and you have little or no recollection that you did it. Yet you didn't destroy your car. You didn't kill anybody. How did you do that? Or how about this? You go to a movie in a movie theater, 3-hour-long movie. It's a great movie. Now, consciously, you know the movie's not real, but you have emotions and feelings for the characters, and you see the character's going to do something dangerous, and you want to yell at them and say, don't do that, don't do that. And then the movie ends, 3 hours goes by. That 3 hours seemed like 10 minutes. It's a hypnotic state. Or here's another good one. Hypnosis doesn't have to even be eyes closed. How many times have you been like in a loud restaurant with somebody and you're having a great conversation with them and you're in deep rapport and it's really noisy. Maybe there's music going on, but all that kind of just faded away. And it's just the two of you connecting back and forth. Then somebody in the restaurant recognizes you and they walk up to you and say, hey, Rick, how you doing? Blah, 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 blah. And they walk away. And then the two of you can't remember what you were talking about because they interrupted it's a trance pattern. You're in a pattern, a trance pattern. So we do these things all the time. By the way, our bad habits are hypnotic states. We're doing something over and over again that we know is not good for us.
Yeah.
But we do it anyway. We rationalize it. We do it. It's a hypnotic state. And our good habits are those things too. Fortunately, we got those things through repetition and ingraining them in our subconscious mind, which, by the way, your subconscious mind does not distinguish good, bad, right, or wrong. That's why it can rationalize why a bad habit is something good. It's one of the reasons why people struggle with their weight. If you've been heavy all your life, a lot of times the association your mind has with being heavy is not bad. It's loving.
Yeah.
It feels loving and caring. So now you're not happy with yourself. So now you force yourself to go on some kind of an eating program or a diet. And your mind goes, what are you doing? You've been heavy all your life and you're alive. So therefore being heavy is a good thing and you feel loved and cared for. Why would you want to take that away from you? Why do you want to take love away from you? We don't know about this losing weight thing. It could make you sick. You could die. It's an unknown. So you better stop doing it. But what it does, instead of saying it that way, it starts to find excuses and rationalizations why you can't do this. Something comes up out of the ordinary. Oh my gosh, we got to go take care of this. We'll come back to this when we have more time. And it allows you to wander away and slowly but surely drift back to where you were before.
Yeah, well said. And I think that anyone listening to that could instantly connect. There's something in each of our lives, no matter what kind of growth we've experienced or the things that we've done, this still applies to us every single day.
Oh, yes, it does. Well, you can learn to use it though. So like I grew up in a household where my parents were fearful of everything. Okay. Financial, physical. That's not a good way to grow up because you grow up being afraid of the world.
Right.
And I used to have these horrible anxiety attacks. I don't have them anymore. And I spent years trying to get rid of that uneasy feeling inside of me. And what I figured out is instead of fighting myself, because the moment I would, sometimes when you start to push against things, what do? They push back. So I've learned to use those things as a tool. So like, for example, if someone proposes an opportunity to me that's really out of the box and something different,
Mm-hmm.
my first instinct is I get this horrible, uneasy feeling in my stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of trying to fight that feeling, it sets an alarm off now. It's an alarm. And the alarm goes off and said, okay, is this really something dangerous? And my instincts and my intuition are telling me to not do it, and I should avoid it. Or is it the old programming in me scared to death saying you're not good enough to do this? So I have rules set up. The alarm goes off and I say, okay, I'm going to take a 24-hour pause. And my rule one is I know I'm not going to make a decision right now.
Love that.
And I'm going to sit on this because I'm going to wait for this feeling, because you start to go into a little bit of fight or flight and you get into cortisol and adrenaline dump, and then you can't think at all.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So, but I also know that feeling doesn't usually last that long. We have a tendency that when we feel that way, that's going to last forever. But when you really think about it, after about 3 or 4 hours, it starts to dissipate. So one is I know that this is not how I really feel. I'm going to take a pause. I don't make any decisions. I even have a standard answer. Because if you propose something to me and I'm in that state, I'm not really in the right state of mind to assess what you're proposing to me. So my standard answer is, hey, that's a really great idea. Let me think about this. I'll get back to you by tomorrow. Take myself off the hook. And then I can process it, come back the next day, and I have a better assessment of whether, yes, it's something I should avoid, or it's just me in my old programming and I need to move forward. And so we have to learn to use the things that we've been given and not necessarily fight them. I see a lot of people fight. They're fighting to overcome the things they had. Well, what if you could use those things to your advantage? It might be a little bit easier.
Sure. Yeah, I love that. And that's such an easy thing, a quick technique to use. I like that. Okay. So let's go back to there was something I think I started to ask you about it, and then you gave me a great answer for what I asked you about, but let me ask you again. What would you say one or two other things that we tend to do as humans where we get in our own way? Yeah, go with that.
Well,
wherever you want to go with that.
I think the biggest thing is, especially even more so now, is impatience. Instant gratification. I always say that if you are going to be successful, you have to embrace the 3 best friends that already exist inside of you. And those 3 best friends are patience, persistence, faith. So the first one, patience. However long your journey is going to take, that's how long it's going to take. You ain't going to make it go any faster. We want it to go faster. And a lot of times, again, our expectation is that it's going to be faster. And patience is knowing that however long this journey is going to take, I'm going to keep going. And I'll get there. Persistence. We have a tendency to believe that when we're going to go from point A to point B, it's going to be a straight line. I don't know about you, but I don't know too many people have had a straight line going from point A to point B. So what happens is we create that expectation again. And in the moment the first obstacle or challenge comes up, our mind goes, see, not working. Let's just go back to what we're familiar with. So persistence is knowing that there are going to be obstacles and challenges. Sometimes you're going to get smacked across the face. You're going to fall down and get a bloody nose and skin your knees. You're just going to get up and you're going to keep going. And the last one's faith. If you knew how to get from point A to point B, you would be there, but you don't. So faith is knowing I'm going to take that first step. I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. And every time I take another step of the path in front of me will be revealed. And it's just having faith and stepping forward. And I think that scares a lot of people too. Yeah. They don't know how to get there. So they just don't do it. It's easier not to, because you don't have to be afraid then. So I think embracing your 3 best friends are probably the most important things: patience, persistence, and faith, because those things will take you to where you want to go. Like I look at myself now and how I'm working with people. I had no idea 15 years ago what that would look like.
Sure.
So it's just like, am I going to be a speaker? Am I going to coach people? Am I going to do both? I don't know. So let's just move forward and see how it evolves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just go with it and see what happens.
Okay. Let me ask you this. If you have 3 best friends, patience, persistence, and faith, do you have 3 enemies of that? Or do you have things that seem to work contrary to that?
Well, I don't think I have 3 enemies. I think as a person, one is be careful with your expectations. Like I said, they're a double-edged sword. They can help you or hurt you. I think that a lot of people are not very self-aware. And I think that being self-aware is a powerful tool. But a lot of people go through life and they're just not aware of anything that they're doing. They're, and then it's very hard to change what you're not aware of.
Right.
I have people I work with and I see the pattern and they're blind. They can't see it. And it's so obvious what they're doing. My favorite was I'll get somebody to call me. They want help. They procrastinate all the time. I'll propose to them a program. Then they disappear. 6 months later, I need help with procrastinating. Okay, here's the program again. It's the same price as it was before. Okay, it's good. Let me think about it. Don't hear from me. So what happens is the thing they're trying to overcome stops them from doing something. What happens is in a moment of frustration, they step past it and they reach out and then mind goes, whoa, that was way too scary. We're not going to go do that.
Yeah.
And because people are really not self-aware, or I'll be working with somebody and they're making these changes. I'm listening to them talk and they're doing these things. But when you ask them, they're completely unaware that they've changed anything. They're just not aware. They don't see it.
Yeah.
And, I always tell people, if the only thing you ever get working from me is becoming awake and aware of your thoughts, feelings, emotions, and habits, you're powerful because you can't change the things you're not aware of.
That is
awareness gives you a lot of control and a lot of power.
Absolutely. I love that. And what a great tool for our toolbox. And I also love that because what you're not saying is you must follow this recipe.
No.
You must follow my 3-step plan. It is, look, if you get nothing else, your life is going to advance and you are going to be and become more.
Sure.
If you increase your awareness of who you are, right? And what you're doing. Okay. So think about that person who is an entrepreneur and they want to go bigger in some way. I think we've kind of talked a lot about people who are sort of on the hamster wheel, maybe someone who is not necessarily on the hamster wheel per se, they're leveling up and they know they need a breakthrough. They don't know what it is, but they just know they need some kind of a breakthrough, meaning that, in ways that many ways of their life that could be measured, it looks like what people would call success. Right. But they feel something bigger coming and, they want to level up. What are your thoughts about how do you help people like that? How can they help themselves?
To take your life, from the perspective of a business person, entrepreneur, you're at a certain level. To get to the next level, you have to change how you think. You can't do the same things you did at the level you're at now to get to the level you want to be at. So you got to change your values and beliefs and how you see things. The subconscious mind sees in pictures. It is picture driven. It doesn't distinguish real and not real, and it doesn't distinguish time. So if you give it a picture of what you want and how you want to be with purpose, passion, conviction, it'll start to drive towards that. And so what makes hypnosis such a powerful tool for someone who's trying to achieve success in their business, it can help them create new pictures in their head of the values and beliefs they need to have and they want. How about of the outcome? You don't have to know how to get there. If you did, you'd be there. I mentioned that before. But I always look at your subconscious mind as a great mathematician. Give it a strong picture of what you want, and then it starts to work backwards. It says, okay, you're going to do this. In order to do this, you have to do that. In order to do that, you have to do this. And it works to the present moment. So now the first small step becomes easier and more logical to take. And each step is a progression building to get into where you want to go. But, like in the business world, let's take a guy like Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
Okay. Steve Jobs and Wozniak are in their mother's garage tinkering with the first Apple computers. They didn't just get lucky and all of a sudden Apple became this giant success. They had a clear picture in here of what that was going to be like, how it was going to be, how it was going to move forward. And they burned it in their subconscious mind. Napoleon Hill talked about it, focusing your conscious attention on what you want, turning it over to your subconscious mind, and then to the infinite intelligence of the universe.
Yeah.
So it was just a matter of the physical world catching up to their internal world. Same thing for me. I had to become 175 pounds or less inside first before I could do that on the outside.
Very nice.
Because it made sense.
And in that process right there, what role does hypnosis play in that process? And how would you, if someone came to you and they wanted that and they said, okay, help me with this, how would you work with them? How would hypnosis play a part of that?
Well, I work with them in a process. So I've worked with hundreds of people over the years. And I started going through my notes. This is, I don't know how many years ago. And while everybody was different, I noticed that I was following a protocol. And the protocol was really based on 4 pillars. I call them the 4 R's. They are relax, release, reprogram, and reinforce. So when I start to work with somebody, the first thing I usually say to them is, we're going to be doing these sessions together. And these first few sessions are really going to be foundational. It's kind of like building a house. You build a house and you see this, you think about the beautiful kitchen you're going to build and the luxurious bathroom. First part of the house you build is the least attractive, but the most important: foundation. Build a strong foundation. You can build a house on that foundation that can weather almost any storm and last a lifetime. So what I tell them is, we may not be working exactly what you want to work on at the beginning, but the things we're working on will probably have a tremendous, gigantic effect on those things. So the first R, relax. In a deep, relaxed hypnotic state, 1, you relieve a lot of stress and anxiety, which allows you to think more clearly. But 2, that's also a peak performance state, like an athlete in the zone. So all of a sudden, in this relaxed state, you have greater access to your resources, your skills, your creativity, your imagination, your memory, better control of your emotions, feelings, habits, and impulses. And then I teach them how to access that state even when they're awake. So now all of a sudden, they're starting to gain more control of their feelings. Second thing, release. We already touched on this. We have old junk, garbage, and crap from our past stored in our head. It's what's getting in the way. They're the negative filters that either prevent you from moving forward, or when you start to move forward, they suck you right back. So let's get rid of that stuff. And I don't believe, a lot of people are afraid of that. They're afraid that they have to re-experience negative emotions, pain, even trauma to get rid of that stuff. I don't believe that.
Sure.
And having worked with hundreds of people over the years, hundreds and hundreds of people, pretty much know that to be true, is you can easily, effortlessly, and painlessly get rid of that stuff, clear it out, and then make room for new things. And then from there, you work on reprogramming, and which is really creating new pictures. I give them a homework exercise. I have them design their life. And then we install that into their subconscious mind. And then it becomes reinforcing the new picture. The negative habits were reinforced. You did something bad. Let's like take a heroin addict. Heroin addict, the first time they do heroin, has the greatest high they ever had. And their mind becomes obsessed with that, and it's chasing that. It wants that again. So every time you do it, it starts to reinforce it. And then it just becomes who you are and what you are, even though it's hurting you and destroying you. Well, it's the same thing with a new habit. If you install something new, a picture, and you start reinforcing it, and your mind starts driving towards it, you get a little bit of a victory. Ooh, positive reinforcement. Now you take more, and you do more, and you do more. And I think that's really, really important. So it's really simple. The process is simple. It's learning how to relax and getting into that relaxed state. It's clearing out the baggage, creating a new picture, and then reinforcing the new picture. It's very simple.
Nice. So what are the modes with which someone, if they want to work directly with you, what would be the modes in which they can work with you?
Well, they can work with me two ways. Most people work with me on the phone.
Okay.
I assess them, I lay out a program for them, and then we work together on the phone. We book short phone appointments where we talk, sometimes about nonsensical things, but I'm listening and I'm taking notes on what they say and how they say it. That gives me what I need. And then the same day, they'll receive a hypnotic recording from me that'll allow them to make the adjustments and changes they need to make. So like when they're done working with me, they'll have a library of these recordings that they can use to reinforce the changes they made working with me, so they don't go back to what they did before. And also continue to make more progress long after they're done working with me. So it's simple. And then the other, I have some people that I've worked with, some celebrities where they want to work with me face to face, and somebody wants to fly me out to work with them wherever they're at. We do we'll do a 3-day intensive where we'll do a couple sessions a day, and then some follow up on the phone. So.
And what about people who want to learn the practice of hypnosis to take it to others? What opportunities do you have to kind of train people in that?
Paul and I have been talking, and we created this program, and it's funny. Its birth came out of when I was in South Carolina filming with Paul.
Yeah, right.
You. And I'm sitting in the hotel, and as usual, Paul goes, "I got an idea." And he walks up, he says, "What if we could train our coaches to use hypnosis? Nobody's doing that. What if, and think about how powerful a tool that really is, because a lot of coaches, when they work with their clients, struggle with the things I mentioned. They give their clients specific things to do that they know will help them improve their lives, and they don't do it. Or they start to do it and they sabotage it. So what if they had more tools in their tool bag, like using hypnosis, to get rid of some of that stuff and open their minds up to the possibilities and let them see a clear picture of their life and how they want it to be and how it can be?" So we're creating that program right now.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay, what is the question that I should have asked you so far? What is the question I've missed?
Oh, I don't know.
In this?
Every question's been a good question. I think we need to take more time in creating routines. People think, "Oh, I'm not a creature of routine." But we are. We're all creatures of routine. The question is, are the routines you're using now supporting you and helping you grow? And people say, "Well, I'm not sure." I go, "Well, what are the outcomes you have right now? Are they working for you? If they are, great. Then keep doing what you're doing." But this is all about doing small things and making small adjustments. And, these highly successful people throughout history and in the present all do these things, even if they're not aware of it. So here, I'll tell you fun. Years ago, when I say years, I'm in my early 20s. I'm in the early 1980s, traveling on the road. I'm selling upholstery fabrics, closeouts and seconds, and I'm calling on furniture manufacturers, all kinds of people. And I'm traveling in the South. There's no cell phones. There's no GPS. I had my maps and my road atlases. And I used to have these big giant trunks I would travel with in my car. They were on wheels. So there would be bodies in there, and they used to make fun of me because I was from Chicago. People say, "Oh, you got the dead bodies in there?" I go, "Well, one of them is empty. If you don't buy anything, I got a spot for you." And so I go to Memphis, Tennessee, and I'm calling on this guy. I have no idea who he is. And I walk into this building, and a secretary brings me into his office, and I'm waiting for him to come. It's a massive office. Almost every inch of every wall is covered with these plaques, these incredible humanitarian things he's done. And in walks this little man, probably in his mid-70s. When I say little, I'm 5'6". He was shorter than me. I had no idea who this guy was. So the guy's name is Kemmons Wilson. Kemmons Wilson's the man who created Holiday Inn hotels in the 1950s. So I got to remember, it's after World War II. We have this huge economic boom in this country, and all of a sudden the average American has money to spend, and they're starting to go on vacations. Obviously, they're not flying. They're driving everywhere. And he had this idea that he was going to build these small little hotels on the road. They're usually 2 stories. They're set up in a square outside. There's a swimming pool in the middle. They have a restaurant in them. Thousands of them all over the country. And they're booming. So he had since retired. I don't know how many hundreds of millions of dollars he was worth at that time. Here he is in his 70s, bored out of his mind. He's starting a new hotel chain, Wilson Inns, and they're not around anymore. And he wants to be involved in everything. So he's picking out fabric for the furniture in the hotels, okay? And he's talking to me, and I don't know really why I listen to him, because when you're in your early 20s, to listen to a gray-haired man, they can't possibly know anything, right? When you're in your 20s, you know everything about everything, and certainly advice from an old person can't be worth anything because it's ancient. But he made a statement to me, and the statement holds true today. And I don't know why it stuck in my head, but I'm so glad that it did. And he said to me, Scott, if you want to be successful, the minor adjustments and changes you need to make are so simple and so basic that the average person will see them as being ridiculous and they'll never do them. And I think all that now, I go, wow, that's a pretty profound statement, but it's true. And it goes back to really what we've been talking about the whole time. It's just doing small things consistently. It's the recipe for all success. Very simple. Do small things every day.
Well said. Well said. Well, and it's so, I think to me, that's so powerful what you're saying there, because, I think most people could go look you up and see big things that are big things. Not everyone went on Oprah and Howard Stern and, working with celebrities and athletes. And it would be easy for someone to look at all of that and think, oh, this guy's lucky, or he did something really grand, And it's so refreshing to hear that the backbone of all that was little things, right? The backbone of that was your own evolution, and the backbone of that was who you decided to become along your journey. And, and that's available to everyone.
I agree. Well, here's what's interesting. When I share my story with people, I don't share my story to impress anybody.
Right.
I'm no different than anybody else. I am not special. I am not smarter or wiser. I'm just like you. And I always think if I can do these things, everybody else can too.
Sure. Yeah.
So why not?
Yeah. Well, very good. Well, listen, as I said from the beginning, every time I'm around you, it's just pleasant. I've enjoyed it very much. And I remember when, Paul said, hey, this guy Scott's coming to the studio and coming in, and, you don't know what it's going to be like when you meet someone, but from the very first moment, it was just like, man, I really like this guy. So, so real good rapport. And I just appreciate that and the opportunities I've been able to be around you. And absolutely, I appreciate the time that you've invested here in having this conversation with me here, and definitely look forward to sharing it with people. And what I love about this stuff is that anyone who cared could listen to this and find tremendous value. I mean, you've really, in all of this, and I know you keep reinforcing the small things, but you're giving people gold. Like, you're telling them where to find the gold. And so I really love that. And I appreciate that you have invested that into anyone who would take the time to listen to this. So thanks for that.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Anything I can do to help?
Absolutely. Well, good to see you today.
Thanks.